Yeah, tell me about your eight. It's interesting. I have some 18s and 17s, and I'm a big fan of 18. I think they're amazing wines with beautiful balance and precision. But actually, it's not. It's interesting to taste them against some 17s, and it's a certainly different, but they're not that far apart.
No, they're not. And I think that there's a little difference in blending what we did in the cellar too that makes them a little closer. Because I retasted today some of them with Michael, and I was saying, the Elu in particular, the 17 versus the 18, is really interesting. Like they're both delicious wines, but the 17 is just a little bit, a little bit leaner, not quite as plump on the finish and the palate. I mean, the 18s I think are just fantastic. They're
Yes.
well worthy of stocking your cellars with, and the 17s, are it's hard when they're two good vintages, right? And I see that, with Michael, and I was tasting today that, a lot more Petit Verdot in the blends in 17 to kind of plump up the density a little
Oh,
bit.
that's really interesting
Yeah, not a
because
lot.
I'm tasting the Dollarhide Elevation 17 against the 18,
Okay.
and so the 17 does that have Petit Verdot?
That has just a little bit of Malbec and
Okay,
Cabernet Sauvignon. There,
but
our premier Napa Valley lot had a little Malbec and Petit Verdot though.
oh,
From
okay.
Dollarhide. Yeah, but
But it comes across, the 17 comes across very fresh.
I think that's kind of consistent with the wines from Dollarhide, though. I think they always have a
Yeah,
little freshness. They're always bright. I think Michael's wines in general have bright acidity.
yeah.
Um, and to me, I think all of them need more time, more so than most Napa wines. I feel like they really start to taste nice after 5, 6 years if you can, hang on, and then 10, 15. But I like
No, but they're really
the
tasty
freshness.
already, though, I must say. And um, another thing was that as always, I enjoyed the Merlot. And so I have the two vintages. But why do you think Merlot hasn't really, it's hasn't really taken off in Napa? And but there's a number of really good Merlots. It's just overlooked by so many people, like
I
undervalued in a way.
I don't understand it, and I think it's seriously undervalued. And I actually thought the 17 and the 18 Merlot, when I tasted them next to each other today, were the best value. I said to Michael, "We got to raise the price on this darn thing, the 18, before we
Yeah,
release this. It's delicious.
it really
Wine is a
is.
steal." And he does a lot of whole berry barrel fermentation on that, and
Oh,
even more
interesting.
so with the 18 vintage, and it gives it just that plump center feel. But I think where we are has fantastic Merlot. There's that Swanson vineyard. It's not
Hmm.
Swanson anymore. Across the street, they made some fabulous Merlot there at
That's true.
Inglenook, the Merlot off that property.
How many acres do you have there then?
Oof, that's a good question. We only have 33 planted total in Rutherford. I'm trying to think, about half that's probably Merlot. 12 acres, I think we have Merlot.
And so how much
A
of
lot of
the Merlot do you make? I guess to some of the does it all go into to the single varietal uh bottling, or do you use some in blends?
No, we use a lot in the Elu and in the RU3 as
Hmm.
well. So all the Merlot is grown at Rutherford, and all the Cabernet Franc is grown at Rutherford. So everything in the Elu that's Merlot and Cabernet Franc is from Rutherford. And then in the RU3, it's Petit Verdot, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon, all from Rutherford. But we make about 1,800 cases of it. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending
So
on the
rem,
other wine.
remind me the difference between RU3 and Elu then?
So the Elu is kind of the best wine we make from the
Hmm.
vintage from both properties. So it's a
Okay.
combination of Dollarhide. It's got malbec in it, and it usually has all 5 red Bordeaux varietals. And the RU3 is the best we can make from the Rutherford vineyard. And
Okay.
we found that we just like Petit Verdot, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon in it. Michael hasn't put any Cabernet Franc in it.
The yeah, the 18s really have,
So that's
I'm tasting the RU3 and the Elu. They really have this purity of fruit, and they're they're sort of weightless in a way. They're lots of flavor, but they're not at all heavy. I think that's a real sign of 18.
Yeah, and I think that the 17 is like that too, but I feel
Hmm.
like the finish that you get, the length of the finish on the 18s, it's just a little bit plumper and a little bit longer and more
Mm,
seamless,
mm.
particularly with the Dollarhide Cabernet, that the finish on it too, it's lively, but the length and simultaneous density in the length, I think is kind of consist for me. That was kind of a consistent feature among the 18s.
Have you had, what sort of response have you had on 18 then?
Really exceptionally well, particularly for the Napa State Cabernet. That's been flying as entry. We'll probably be sold out of it here in a few months. So
And
that's
so,
nice.
do you think that it's pretty, like, do your customers and do consumers know that 2018 is really a fantastic vintage? Like, is it pretty well accepted or and understood?
I think so. I mean, we're not serving as many 18s. We've been serving 16s, which I think 16 is a pretty fantastic and similar vintage
Yeah, I
structure, a
totally
lot of
agree.
density. So that's kind of where we've been for most of it. We'll probably by fall we'll be moving through the 17s. We're selling the 18 Rutherford Cabernet and the Napa State Cabernet, and probably by the fall the others, other than the club members.
Okay, well, that, anyways, there's a lot to look forward to then.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And then what do you think? What's your thought on 19?
I've been really happy with the 19s. I think they're pretty delicious. We had so much rain at the beginning of the 19 season, and that was kind of the last rain we've had. It was
That's
winter 19 in January, February, winter.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty
it's
crazy that.
yeah. I mean, the 20s were tasting great until
Fire.
then there's vintage.
Did you make any 20?
We made a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. So we had started harvest the night before the lightning storm. So we had 2 nights of harvest prior to the fires, and then the fire this time kind of converged on our property. So the smoke situation, you just couldn't resolve any of that. We didn't pick the reds or anything out there.
That's
And we
crazy.
tried to pick everything. We looked at it. We did bucket ferments, just like everybody else, right?
Yeah,
And then, yeah, you couldn't make it. It was so disappointing for everybody, right? You
of
work all year
course.
long, and then in a flash, it's gone. So we made about 1,800 cases of the Napa Valley Estate Sauvignon Blanc, and it was really nice. The team agreed to give $5 a bottle to the Napa Valley Community Foundation Disaster Relief Fund. So that'll be a nice donation in honor of our neighbors who came with their bulldozers and helped save our property.
It's
So
crazy.
there's I've heard 1,400 lightning strikes that hit in
That's crazy.
hours.
That's
Right.
just
So
like a
that
freak of, yeah, a freak of nature.
a freak of nature, and we were so lucky that we didn't have the wind like we did in 17. I mean, remember the
Yeah,
wind?
that was insane.
We didn't have that, thank God.
Okay, no one
Yeah.
ever told me that. That's really interesting. I heard a really interesting story from Will Harlan. They
Mhm.
actually made they made a normal quantity at Harlan of 20. And it's very interesting that that they saw the first fire on Pritchard Hill, and they decided to pick everything
Wow.
because they thought it was going to come down. And it was what I thought was a really interesting story is he said that it made them, they said, okay, well, let's pick because they really gambled. We think there's going to be a big problem. So they picked everything and then they started analyzing the grapes. And of course they were picking a month early. And they
Right.
say now they taste the wines and they're fantastic. And they said, we really like, this sort of goes back to what we used to do in the early 90s when people
Mhm.
picked earlier. And so I think it's interesting that people are just reevaluating, their parameters for ripeness and what happened, and stylistically the wines. And it's sort of all interesting what Napa's, going through because of, let's say, an amazing year like 18 where when it was cool and long, and then a crazy
Mm.
year like 20 where you have to pick earlier. So even Philip Milka was saying that too. He says, yeah, now I have the feeling we have to understand how we can pick earlier but still have the ripeness we want, for our wines. And I think there's a whole a lot of, let's say, people in that generation and younger are really thinking about that. So it's sort of interesting times.